The silence was the first thing that hit me. Not the good kind, the deep quiet of Sunday mornings. This was a hollow silence, like a sound had been ripped out of the world. My eyes snapped open, and the other side of the bed was empty. That was normal sometimes. She was an early riser, usually brewing coffee, humming a tune I loved. But today, the air felt thin, cold. I reached across my hand, finding only cool sheets where her warmth should have been. A prickle of unease started in my stomach. I called her name, soft at first, then louder. No answering call, no shuffling from the kitchen, no clatter of ceramic mugs. Just that crushing, empty quiet. I threw off the covers, my heart starting to thump an uneven rhythm. A knot tightened in my throat. This wasn't like her. She never just left without a note, without a kiss, without a morning breath whisper. Without into the living room, then the kitchen. The blinds were drawn, just like I'd left them last night. Nothing was out of place, no sign of a hurried exit, no frantic packing, except for one thing. On the kitchen counter next to her favorite coffee mug, empty and clean, as if she'd just finished her last cup, lay a single sheet of paper, folded neatly in half. My name, in her perfect flowing script, was written on the front. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It felt heavy, like it held all the weight of the world. I unfolded it. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a list, a to-do list. My breath caught in my chest. Each item was numbered, written in that same familiar hand. The first one, the very first thing on the list, punched me in the gut so hard I stumbled back against the counter, nearly knocking over a pile of clean dishes. Number 1, change the locks. The words blurred for a moment, then snapped into sharp focus, burning into my brain. Change the locks. Not I am leaving. Not we're over. Just a cold, practical instruction. It wasn't a question. It was a command. A final, irreversible instruction for my future. For a future without her. My lungs felt like they had collapsed. I gasped for air, but it wouldn't come. My vision swam. Change the locks. It meant she wasn't coming back. Not ever. It meant she wanted to make sure I knew that. It meant she wanted to make sure I couldn't forget it. Couldn't hope. Couldn't pretend this was just a bad dream. It was done. Finished. I stood there, staring at the innocent-looking paper, the polite numbering of the items feeling like a cruel joke. The morning sun trying to peek through the kitchen window seemed too bright, too cheerful for this moment. It mocked me with its relentless new day. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. There had been no fight, no big argument last night. We'd eaten dinner, watched a movie, laughed at something silly. We went to bed, her head on my chest, her hand intertwined with mine. I remembered the feeling of her breath on my neck, the soft warmth of her body pressed against mine. She had kissed me goodnight, a normal kiss, a loving kiss. Or so I thought. Was it all a lie? Was she planning this while she lay beside me? The thought was a fresh stab of pain, sharper than the first. It wasn't just that she left. It was the clinical precision of it. The list, the instruction, the brutal efficiency. It was like she was erasing herself from my life and making me do the work of the erasure. My hands clenched, crumpling the paper slightly before I forced them to relax. I couldn't destroy it. It was all I had left of her, in a weird, twisted way, a monument to the end of everything. My eyes drifted around the kitchen, her plants on the windowsill still needing water, her favorite mug, now mocking me with its emptiness. The small magnet she bought us from that trip to the coast, holding up a postcard of a lighthouse. Everything was still here. Everything except her. A cold certainty settled over me. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a temporary thing. This was real. And the first thing she wanted me to do, the first step in this new, terrifying, lonely existence, was to change the locks. To seal myself into this house, into this life, without her. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move. I needed to do it. Not because she told me to, but because I had to. I had to feel that click, that finality. I had to make it real, even if it shattered me. I had to face the first item on her list, if only to prove to myself that I could still breathe. Even if each breath felt like broken glass in my lungs. I walked to the front door, my gaze fixed on the familiar brass knob. The knob she had touched every single day. The knob I had unlocked for her countless times. Soon it would be gone, replaced, just like everything else. I felt a tear trace a path down my cheek. Then another and another. Soon my face was wet, but I didn't care. The sobs started, quiet at first, then racking my body. A raw, guttural sound tore from my throat. It was the sound of a heart breaking, piece by piece, inside an empty house. And all because of a list. A list with one single shocking instruction. Change the locks. The drill vibrated in my hand, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the quiet house. Each turn of the screw, each piece of the old lock assembly falling away, felt like another piece of my life detaching. It was mid-afternoon now. The sun was higher, casting long shadows across the living room floor, but the light didn't feel warm. It just felt bright, exposing everything, especially the emptiness. After the initial shock and the uncontrolled crying spell, a strange kind of numbness had set in. A mechanical urge to just do the thing. To get the first item on her damn list done. Maybe then the weight would lift just a little. I had driven to the hardware store in a daze, the crumpled list clutched in my hand, as if I needed physical proof of my mission. Teenager at the counter had given me a weird look when I just pointed to the display of deadbolt locks without saying a word. Paid in silence, my mind still replaying her words on the paper. Now, with the old lock finally off, a gaping hole stared back at me from the door frame. It felt symbolic. A hole where something vital used to be. A security, a warmth, a connection, all gone. I picked up the new lock, shiny and alien in my hand. This wasn't our lock. Wouldn't hold the memory of her fumbling with her keys after a late night out, or the triumphant click of her getting it right on the first try. It was just a lock. Cold, impersonal metal. Installing it was harder than taking the old one off. My hands, still slightly shaky, fumbled with the tiny screws. Each minute stretched into an hour. My mind drifted, unwelcome memories flashing before my eyes. Her laugh, bright and carefree, echoing through these very rooms. Her head resting on my shoulder as we watched television. The way she'd hum our song while making breakfast. The way she'd leave little notes for me sometimes. Funny ones, loving ones, never one like this. A pang of resentment hit me. Why a list? Why not a conversation? Why not a fight, even? Anything but this cold, detached message. It felt like a dismissal, like I wasn't even worth a proper goodbye. It was cowardly, I thought, a bitter taste filling my mouth. To just disappear, leaving instructions behind like I was some kind of hired handyman. I tightened the last screw, the new lock finally in place. I tested it. The bolt slid smoothly into the strike plate with a solid thud. A sound of finality. Done. Number 1. Change the locks. Done. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, breathing heavily. It didn't feel better. It felt worse. Now it was truly over. Now there was no pretense, no hope. The house was mine again, and it felt like a tomb. I wandered back to the kitchen, the crumpled list still lying on the counter. My eyes avoided it at first, then drifted back, drawn by a morbid curiosity. What else was on it? What other instructions did she have for me, for my new life alone? I didn't want to look, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. My gaze skimmed past the first item, already completed. My heart gave a little lurch. Number 2, cancel the joint gym membership. My stomach clenched. That was so her. Practical. Efficient. Our gym membership. We had signed up together, full of good intentions, joking about getting fit for our imagined future together. We'd gone to spin classes, laughed at our pathetic attempts at yoga, even spotted each other during weights. It was another thread in the tapestry of our shared life. And now she wanted me to snip. It felt like she was systematically dismantling our life, piece by piece, and making me the one to do the demolition. It was torture, drawn out and precise. Each item wasn't just a task. It was an act of severance. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. The emotional toll of the day was immense. My body felt heavy. My eyes burned. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't even thought about it. The idea of food felt repulsive. I just wanted to sleep, to escape this crushing reality, if only for a few hours. I went to the bedroom, the room we had shared for years. Her side of the bed was still perfectly made, just as she had left it. A small indent on her pillow where her head had rested. The faint scent of her shampoo still lingered in the air. I sank onto my side of the bed, not bothering to change, not bothering to pull back the covers. I just lay there, staring at her empty pillow. The silence was back, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't just the quiet of the house now. It was the quiet of her absence. Quiet of a future that had suddenly evaporated into thin air. I closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. All I could see was the list, burning behind my eyelids. Nope 1. Change the locks. Done. Number 2. Cancel the joint gym membership. A new task. Another reminder of what we had and what was now gone. The systematic undoing of us. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this list was going to define my next few weeks, maybe even months. It was her final act, and my unwilling initiation into a life I never wanted, the gym membership. It seemed like such a small thing, compared to changing the locks, but it weighed on me just as much. The locks were about keeping her out, a physical barrier. The gym membership was about erasing a shared activity, a small, everyday piece of our life together. It was a mundane task, but loaded with meaning. I stared at the crumpled list on the counter. It had been there for 2 days now. I hadn't touched it since I finished the lock. I'd mostly just existed in a fog, wandering around the house, picking up things that reminded me of her, then putting them down again. The coffee mug, her favorite book, a sweater she'd left on the back of a chair. Each item felt like a lead weight in my hand. Today, the numbness had given way to a dull ache. Not sharp pain, just a constant throbbing emptiness. I knew I had to tackle the list. It felt like the only way to move forward, even if moving forward meant tearing apart the past. I picked up the phone. Calling the gym seemed daunting, like admitting defeat out loud. "Hi, I'd like to cancel a membership." "No, I'd like to cancel our membership." The words would feel like knives in my own heart. I dialed the number, my finger hovering over the call button. I could picture her there next to me, sweating on the treadmill, her face flushed but happy. We used to motivate each other. "Just 5 more minutes," she'd say, grinning. "You can do it." And I would. Now who would say that? I hit call. The automated voice on the other end felt strangely comforting in its indifference. I navigated the menus, finally reaching a human. "I need to cancel a membership," I mumbled, my voice rough. "Account name, please." The cheerful voice asked, "It's for 2 people, mine and hers." I gave our names. The silence that followed felt like judgment. "I see," the person said, their tone softening slightly. "Is there a reason for the cancellation?" My mind went blank. What reason could I give? "She left" felt too raw. "It's over" felt too dramatic. "We don't need it anymore" felt like a lie. "Personal reasons," I finally managed, my voice barely a whisper. "They didn't push. They just processed it." The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes to erase years of shared workouts, shared goals, shared laughter. When I hung up, the silence returned, heavier this time. Done. Number 2. Cancel the joint gym membership. Done. I looked back at the list. What was next? I dreaded it. Each item was a little death. Number 3. Return her books to the library. My eyebrows furrowed. The library, she loved the library, sure, but she owned so many books. Why would she leave library books behind? I walked over to our bookshelf, the one we'd lovingly filled over the years. Her side was still stacked high with novels, poetry, travel guides. I ran my hand over the spines, remembering us debating which book to read next, recommending authors to each other. I scanned the titles, looking for any that might be library books. Most of them were hardcovers or paperbacks we'd bought. Then I saw them tucked away on a lower shelf, a small stack of 5 books, all with that familiar library sticker on the spine. They weren't her usual kind of books. These were heavier, more academic. History, philosophy. A book about grief. Grief! My stomach twisted. Why was she reading books about grief? Had she been grieving something even before she left? The thought was unsettling. It suggested a depth to her departure that went beyond just our relationship ending. Had she been carrying a burden I hadn't seen? My first instinct was to just leave them. She left them. She could come back for them. But the list was clear. Return her books, not her personal books. Her books, the library books. It felt like she wanted to clear her slate completely. Even the smallest of debts, I gathered them up. They felt cold in my hands. Paragraph was highlighted. Grief is not a linear process. It circles, it dives, it resurfaces. It is an ocean, not a river. My breath hitched. Was she going through grief? For something or someone else? And if so, why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she let me help her? The idea that she might have been struggling, quietly and alone, while I was oblivious, made my heartbreak deepen into something more complex, something laced with regret and confusion. The thought of going to the library felt strange. It was a public place, I hadn't been out much since she left. The thought of facing the world, of pretending everything was fine, was exhausting. But the list, it was a leash, pulling me forward. I looked at the stack of books. These weren't just about her. They were about something she was thinking about, something she was reading about, something she might have been feeling. It wasn't just return these books. It was, here are pieces of my mind you never knew. The simple act of returning library books suddenly felt like a quest into her hidden thoughts. I knew then that completing this list wasn't just about closure. It was about discovery, about understanding why. And whether I wanted to or not, I was going to follow every instruction until I found out, even if it broke me 1,000 times over. The library was quiet, hushed. It was the kind of silence that usually soothed me, but today it just amplified the buzzing in my head. I walked past the rows of shelves, each one filled with countless stories, knowing that our story had just ended, brutally and abruptly. The books about grief, history, philosophy felt heavy in my arms. I reached the returns desk, the familiar whir of the automated sorter sounding like a distant, tired sigh. I handed them over, avoiding eye contact with the librarian. I didn't want to explain why these books, why now. As the last book slid down the chute, a small, folded piece of paper fluttered out from between its pages. It landed silently on the counter. I stared at it. It wasn't the same kind of paper as the list. This was a bookmark, a small piece of cardstock, and on it, in her familiar handwriting, was another note. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this part of the list? A hidden instruction? Or something else? I picked it up, my fingers shaking. It was a quote. Just a quote, beautifully written, from the book on grief. The price of love is grief. The depth of your sorrow is the measure of your love. My eyes stung. This wasn't a task. It was a message. A heartbreakingly beautiful, devastatingly painful message. It felt like she was acknowledging the pain I was feeling. Acknowledging what we had. It was a secret, a private understanding between us, even though she was gone. It made me feel a little less alone and a lot more confused. Back home, I looked at the list again. Number 4. Empty the old photo album. My stomach dropped. The old photo album. Not the digital photos, not the ones on my phone, but the physical one. The big, leather-bound one, with faded pages that held the first few years of our relationship. The awkward first date pictures, the silly ones from our first holiday, the one where we looked so young and hopeful. Those were the pictures we'd spent hours poring over, laughing, reminiscing, emptying. It meant taking all those memories, all those tangible proofs of our shared history, and just removing them, erasing the visual narrative of us. It felt like tearing out pages from my own history. I found the album on a shelf in the living room, gathering a fine layer of dust. I picked it up. It felt unexpectedly light. When I opened it, the pages were already bare. Every single photo was gone. My breath hitched. She had already done it. She had emptied it herself. A cold dread seeped into my bones. This wasn't a task for me. This was her showing me something. She had done the hard work of tearing out those memories herself before she left. It was an act of painful self-severance. It also felt like a mercy, in a twisted way. I didn't have to rip them out myself. She had taken that burden from me, but why? Why empty the album if she was just going to leave it for me to find, already empty? Unless... I flipped through the blank pages, each one a stark white canvas of what was no longer there. It was like looking at a ghost, the ghosts of our past. I closed the album, a profound sadness settling over me. This wasn't just a list of chores. It was a series of carefully orchestrated messages. Each item was a step in a strange, silent ritual of farewell. And she had thought about it so much, planned it so thoroughly. My mind went back to the hidden quote in the library book. The price of love is grief, and the empty photo album. Was she trying to tell me that she felt this loss too? That her leaving was painful for her as well? A sudden memory pierced through the haze of grief. Weeks ago, she had seemed distant, quiet. I had asked her if she was okay, and she brushed it off, saying she was just stressed with work. I believed her. Now, I wondered if that was when she started planning this. When she started reading about grief. When she started emptying the album. The thought made my chest ache with a different kind of pain. Regret. Regret that I hadn't pushed harder. Regret that I hadn't seen the signs. Regret that I had been so blind. This list wasn't just about me moving on. It was about her preparing me for a departure that was clearly meticulously planned, painfully executed. And I was left to pick up the pieces, not just of my shattered life, but of her secret, agonizing journey towards leaving. The intrigue deepened, overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. What else was hidden in this twisted treasure hunt of farewell? The empty photo album felt like a punch to the gut, but also a strange hint, a clue maybe. Each item on the list was not just a chore, but a breadcrumb she was leaving for me. Breadcrumbs that led further into her mind and deeper into my own pain. I looked at the list again, a morbid fascination growing inside me. Number 5, clean out the attic, specifically the old chest. The attic. My heart skipped a beat. The attic was where we stored all our old, sentimental stuff. Things from before we met. Things from our early days. Things we couldn't part with. And the old chest. That was my chest. A heavy wooden trunk my grandfather had given me, filled with things from my childhood. Letters, old toys. I hadn't opened it in years. What would she want me to clean out of my old chest? A wave of confusion washed over me. Why my things? Why the attic? This felt different from the other items. The locks, the gym, the library books, the photo album. Those were all about our shared life or her things. But the old chest was mine. The attic was dusty, filled with forgotten things under a single bare bulb. Cobwebs clung to the rafters. I pushed aside old boxes, holiday decorations, and dusty furniture covers until I found it. The old chest tucked away in a dark corner. It was heavier than I remembered. I unlatched the rusty clasps, the metal groaning in protest. The scent of old wood and forgotten memories filled the air. Inside, it was just as I remembered it. My old baseball glove, a faded concert ticket from a band I loved in high school, a stack of letters from my college days, Nothing related to her. Nothing at all. But as I lifted out a pile of old t-shirts, I saw it. Tucked underneath, almost hidden, was a small sealed envelope. It had my name on it, again in her familiar handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This wasn't a list item. This was a direct message. A letter. My heart pounded. Was this the explanation I had been desperately craving? The why. I tore open the seal, my fingers clumsy with anticipation. Inside there wasn't a long letter. Just a single sheet of paper, folded in half, and on it a short note. To my dearest love, if you are reading this, I am truly gone. I couldn't say goodbye in person. It would have been too hard for both of us. This list is not meant to hurt you, though I know it will. It's meant to help you, to guide you to move forward, and to understand. Please, look closer at the log. Not the new one. The words were a comfort, a small warmth in the crushing cold. But the rest, I couldn't say goodbye in person. It would have been too hard. And then, the instruction. Look closer at the log. Not the new one, the old one. Forgive me. My mind reeled. The old log? The one I had just removed. The one that was probably still sitting on the kitchen counter, next to her empty coffee mug. What could possibly be special about the old log? I scrambled down the attic ladder, nearly tripping in my haste. I raced to the kitchen, my heart thumping against my ribs. There it was. The old deadbolt, the brass tarnished with age. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It was just a lock, a worn-out piece of metal. I examined it closely, my fingers tracing the grooves, the keyhole. Nothing. What was I missing? Then my thumb brushed against something tiny, almost imperceptible, glued to the underside of the bolt mechanism. It was a minuscule piece of paper, rolled up tightly, barely bigger than a grain of rice. How could I have missed it? It was tucked into a crevice, hidden from plain sight. With trembling fingers, I pried it loose. It was stiff, almost bitter. I carefully unrolled it. It was another note, written in an even tinier script. My eyes strained to read. Look at the back of the small picture frame on your bedside table. My breath hitched. Another hidden instruction. This was getting intense, like a scavenger hunt designed to rip my heart out, piece by piece. But there was also a new feeling emerging, one of desperate hope. Hope for answers, hope for understanding. I rushed to the bedroom. On my bedside table sat a small silver frame. It held a picture of us from our very first Christmas together, wrapped in scarves, laughing as snow fell around us. It was one of my favorites. I picked it up, my hands shaking. I carefully turned it over, my eyes scanning the back. There, taped to the cardboard backing, was another tiny note. This time, it was clear she was leading me on a very specific trail, a trail meant to reveal something important. I peeled it off, my fingers almost too numb to feel the paper. What would this one say? What was she trying to tell me? With these hidden messages within messages. The level of planning was staggering. She didn't just leave, she orchestrated a journey of discovery for me. And the thought, while agonizing, also kept me moving. It gave me a purpose in my grief. I had to follow the trail. I had to understand. This wasn't just a breakup. This was something far, far bigger. The note on the back of the picture frame was even smaller than the last. My eyes squinted, trying to make out the delicate script. It simply said, "Her parents' house, the old maple tree, under the third route from the west." My jaw dropped. Her parents' house. They lived 3 states away, an 8-hour drive at least. And the old maple tree? I remembered it. We used to sit under it on warm summer evenings, drinking lemonade, listening to the crickets. This was a major complication. It wasn't a task I could do from home. It was a journey. A pilgrimage, almost. What could possibly be buried under that tree? Something so important, so crucial, that she would send me hundreds of miles to retrieve it. Thought of facing her parents after this, after their daughter had simply vanished from my life, leaving me with a cryptic list. It filled me with dread. What would I tell them? Would they even know what happened? Or was this her secret, kept even from them? The drive felt endless. 8 hours of silence, except for the hum of the road and the tormented echo of her list in my head. I replayed every memory, every conversation, searching for a clue, a hint I might have missed. But there was nothing, no warning, just the perfect, loving relationship, and then the sudden, brutal end. I arrived at dusk. The old maple tree loomed against the darkening sky, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. The house was dark, the windows like vacant eyes. Her parents weren't home, a relief and a disappointment. All at once. I didn't have to face them, but I also couldn't ask them anything. I walked towards the tree, my heart pounding. The roots were just as I remembered, thick and strong. I counted from the west, 1, 2, 3. I knelt down, my fingers probing the damp earth under the root. The soil was soft, almost loose, as if something had been buried there recently. My fingers brushed against something hard, a small wooden box. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was what she wanted me to find. I pulled it out. It was a simple, unadorned box, maybe 6 inches long. My name was carved crudely into the lid. I traced the letters, my mind racing. She had made this box herself. She wasn't good with wood. Her hands were more artistic with paint or textiles. This carving was rough, but clearly her attempt. It must have taken her ages. I opened the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of dried leaves, was a single, tiny, folded piece of paper, and beneath it, a small, intricate silver locket. It was tarnished with age, not shiny and new. It was something old, something treasured. I picked up the locket first. It was delicate, beautiful. I pressed the clasp and it sprang open. Inside, on one side, was a tiny, faded picture of a young woman I didn't recognize. On the other side was a miniature lock of hair, silvery white. Who was this woman? And whose hair? It didn't look like her, or her mother, or anyone I knew from her family photos. A deep, unsettling chill ran through me. Then I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a list item. It was a short letter. My dearest love, I needed you to find this. This locket belonged to my grandmother. The woman in the picture is my twin sister, Lily. She died when we were children, just 6 years old. She had long, silvery hair. I never told you about her. My family doesn't talk about it. It's too painful. But I think about her every day. I feel her absence every moment. And now I am gone too. Not like Lily, but gone from your life just the same. The last item on the list is inside this box. Look again and know that I loved you more than anything. But some things are bigger than love. Forgive me. Always her name. My world tilted on its axis. A twin sister who died at 6, and she never told me. Not once. Not in all our years together. This was the secret. This was the why. Not a secret about me or us. A secret about her. Profound, devastating loss she had carried alone, unspoken, all her life. The locket felt heavy in my hand. The tiny picture of a smiling child, gone too soon. The silvery hair, a tangible piece of a lost life. And her words, and now I am gone too, not like Lily, but gone from your life just the same. The heartbreak I felt before was a dull ache compared to this new, shattering grief. Grief for her, for the burden she carried, for the sister she lost. And grief for the painful parallel she drew between her sister's death and her own departure from my life. Some things are bigger than love. What could be bigger than love? What could possibly drive her to leave me? To orchestrate this elaborate, agonizing farewell, all stemming from a childhood tragedy she never shared. The answer was right here in this box, the last item. My fingers fumbled, desperately searching the bottom of the box. And there it was, another slip of paper, hidden under the leaves. This was it. My heart was in my throat as I pulled out the final slip of paper from the box. This was it, the last instruction, the one that would finally explain everything, or so I hoped. I unfolded it carefully, my hands shaking. Number 6. Visit the old lighthouse. The old lighthouse. My mind raced, trying to place it. We had visited many lighthouses over the years, symbols of hope and guidance, of standing strong against the storm. Which one? Then it clicked. The lighthouse from our very first trip together. The postcard of it was still on our fridge. The one with the dramatic cliffs and the crashing waves. It was not far from her parents' house, only an hour's drive further up the coast. It was where we'd first said, "I love you," standing on the windswept observation deck holding hands. It was a place of new beginnings for us. Now it was the place for a final ending. The revelation of her twin sister, Lily, had thrown me into a spiral of disbelief and a new kind of grief. She had carried this immense sorrow, this foundational loss, all our years together, and I had been completely oblivious. How could I have been so blind? It made her departure, though still painful, suddenly understandable in a way it wasn't before. It wasn't about me, it was about her and her pain. The drive to the lighthouse was short, but felt like a lifetime. The sun had set, and a full moon cast an eerie glow over the land. The roar of the ocean grew louder as I approached, a primal sound of power and relentlessness. I parked the car and walked towards the path that led to the lighthouse, its beam cutting a slow, deliberate swathe through the darkness. The air was cold, carried on a strong sea breeze. I remembered her leaning into me that first time, shivering despite her coat, but her eyes shining with joy. I climbed the winding path, the familiar ascent, feeling heavy, purpose. When I reached the top, the lighthouse stood tall against the moonlit sky, its light sweeping over the churning ocean. I walked to the edge of the observation deck, looking out at the vast expanse of water. And then I saw it, tucked into a small alcove in the stone wall of the lighthouse, a small worn leather journal. It wasn't hidden, it was almost placed there, waiting to be found. A journal. Not a note, not a quote, but something extensive. My hands trembled as I reached for it. This must be it, the culmination of the list, the full explanation. I sat down on the cold stone bench, the ocean roaring below, the lighthouse beams sweeping over me, illuminating the pages of the journal as I opened it. It was hers. Her handwriting filled the pages, neat and flowing. But here it was also urgent, sometimes messy, sometimes almost frantic. The first few entries were dated months ago, even before I noticed her becoming distant. They were about Lily. She wrote about nightmares, about seeing Lily everywhere, about the crushing guilt of being the one who lived. Then the entries shifted. She began to describe a growing weariness. Not just sadness, but a profound exhaustion, a feeling of being consumed by her grief. She wrote about feeling Lily's presence growing stronger, pulling her back into a past she couldn't escape. "I feel like I am drowning," one entry read. "Lily is calling to me. I see her in the water. I see her in the reflections. I cannot breathe." My heart ached as I read her words. She was suffering deeply, and I hadn't known. I had been so wrapped up in our life, our happiness, that I missed the warning signs of her unraveling. Then came the more recent entries, her decision to leave. Not to leave me because she didn't love me, but to leave everything, to escape the life that felt like it was suffocating her, binding her to a past she couldn't outrun. "I have to go," one entry, dated just a few weeks ago, stated. "I am fading. I can't stay here. I can't drag him down with me. He deserves a full life, a life not overshadowed by my darkness. I love him too much to let my grief consume him too." My eyes blurred with tears. She was leaving to protect me. She wasn't running away from me. She was running away for me. This wasn't abandonment. It was a desperate, self-sacrificing act of love. She thought her grief was a darkness that would swallow us both. She wrote about the list. "I want him to understand. I want him to know it's not his fault. I want him to move on. This list is my last gift to him. A path to acceptance, to release." I saw myself in her words. The careful dismantling of our life together. The locks, the gym, the books, the empty album. Each item was a step not just for me to move on, but for her to release herself from the burden of our shared future. A future she felt she couldn't give me, not whole, not untainted by her pain. The last entry was dated the morning she left. "It is done. The list is left. He will hate me, I know, but he will heal, I hope. The locket is buried, Lily's memory held safe. I am going to the water to find peace. Forgive me, my love. Live a full life. For both of us, my blood ran cold. I am going to the water to find peace, the ocean." She meant the ocean, the very place I was standing now. My mind flashed to Lily, drowned at 6, the water, the place of her twin's death. Not to bring me closure, but to bring me to her final resting place. The roaring ocean below suddenly seemed less beautiful, more menacing. The full horrific truth, like a tidal wave, washed over me, threatening to drown me in its wake. The words, "I am going to the water to find peace. Forgive me, my love. Live a full life." For both of us, echoed in my head a chilling mantra. My hands clutched the journal, knuckles white. The roar of the ocean below the lighthouse wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a hungry presence. She wasn't just leaving. She was ending her life. My breath caught in my throat. Every fiber of my being screamed. All the pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The books on grief, the systematic dismantling of our life, the elaborate scavenger hunt, culminating here at the ocean, at the place that symbolized both our beginning and, for her, her sister's end. Her last words in the journal were a final farewell, not just to me, but to existence itself. My mind raced back to her last entry. "The list is left. He will hate me, I know, but he will heal, I hope, number not hate. Never hate. Just overwhelming pain, confusion, and now a crushing terror." I scrambled to my feet, my eyes frantically scanning the churning waves below. The moon cast a silver path on the water, but I saw nothing, just endless, shifting darkness. How long had she been gone? Days. 3 days. A desperate, futile hope ignited within me. Maybe she didn't do it. Maybe she just meant to find peace near the water, a symbolic resting place for her grief. Tone, the finality, the eerie parallel to Lily, it all pointed to one terrible conclusion. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to move, stumbling down the path from the lighthouse towards the beach. The sand was cold and wet beneath my shoes. The wind whipped around me, pulling at my clothes. I ran blindly, calling her name into the roaring wind, though I knew it was useless. No one would hear me. No one would answer. I reached the water's edge, letting the frigid waves lap at my feet. The vastness of the ocean stretched out before me, overwhelming and indifferent. Had she walked into these very waters? Had she found the peace she so desperately sought? The grief that had been building inside me for days, a slow, aching burn, erupted into a violent sob. It wasn't just heartbreak now, it was devastation. The woman I loved, who had orchestrated this entire, elaborate, painful goodbye, had been consumed by a sorrow so deep she chose to end it all. And I, the man who loved her, had been utterly blind to it. The guilt was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. How could I have missed? The distant glances, the quiet moments, the sudden exhaustion she brushed off as work stress. All those subtle signs, masked by her incredible strength and her fierce independence. I had been too happy, too comfortable, too oblivious. I sank to my knees on the sand, burying my face in my hands, the salt spray mixed with my tears. The raw, guttural cries tore from my throat, sounds of a pain so profound it felt like my very soul was being ripped apart. This wasn't just a breakup, it was a tragedy, a life lost, swallowed by an unseen sorrow. Hours passed. The moon climbed higher, then began its slow descent. I stayed there, numb with shock and despair, until the first hint of dawn painted the horizon a pale gray. The ocean continued its relentless churn, as if nothing had changed. As the first rays of sunlight touched the water, a single worn wooden buoy bobbed into view, caught in a gentle current near the shore. It was an old fishing buoy, painted a faded blue, and tied to it with a piece of rough twine was something small and white. My heart leaped. I stumbled through the shallow water, my eyes fixed on the buoy. As I reached it, I saw it was another small, folded note, exactly like the ones hidden in the lock and the frame. My hands, still numb from cold and grief, struggled to untie it. This wasn't part of the numbered list. This was separate. A final hidden message, intended to be found only if I followed the entire path. I unfolded the tiny paper. Her handwriting, faded by the sea spray, was still legible. My love, if you are reading this, I found my peace. Do not search for me. The ocean holds me now. But I wanted you to know one more thing. The last true item on the list, not numbered. It's inside the hollow of the old buoy. If you open it, it is for you. This is my last hope for you, and for me, a final forgiveness. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the note. She was gone. She had confirmed it. And this was her final message. My eyes found the buoy again. It was old but stood. I saw a small, almost invisible seam where it looked like it could be opened. With trembling fingers, I pried at it. It clicked open, revealing a hollow inside. And there it was. Not a piece of paper. Not another instruction. It was a small, intricately carved wooden bird. A swallow. Its wings were spread as if in flight. I recognized. It was a replica of a tattoo she had on her wrist. A tiny swallow. She had told me once that swallows represented safe return, hope, and love beyond death. My throat tightened. This was her symbol, her hope for me. And then I saw it, carved into the underside of the wooden bird, in tiny, almost invisible letters. A single word, live. Just one word, not a command, not an instruction. A plea, a desperate final wish from the woman who had loved me enough to let me go, to protect me from her own drowning sorrow. Live. For her, for Lily, for us. The weight of it was immense, but in that single word, a strange new sensation began to stir within me. Not hope. Not yet. But something deeper than despair, an understanding that reached beyond my pain, a tragic, heartbreaking, beautiful truth. The list wasn't about breaking me, it was about saving me. The wooden swallow felt warm in my palm, a tiny beacon in the grey dawn. Live. Her last unnumbered instruction, a final desperate plea from beyond the veil of her grief. The word was a heavy anchor, yet it also felt like a fragile lifeline. I sat there on the sand, the buoy rocking gently beside me, the ocean whispering secrets to the shore. The sheer scope of her pain, the depth of her decision, and the meticulous planning of this final act washed over me. She hadn't just left me. She had orchestrated her own departure from life, leaving behind a trail designed to help me understand, to grieve, and ultimately to heal. The anger I'd felt, the resentment at being left with a cold list, had evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming sorrow. Sorrow for her, for the silent battle she fought, for the quiet desperation that consumed her, and guilt, sharp and relentless, for my own blindness. I had been so close, yet so unaware of the storm raging within her. I thought about Lily, her twin, the lost sister, the lifelong shadow. It wasn't just a simple death. It was a foundational trauma, an unhealed wound that had festered, unseen, beneath the surface of her vibrant personality. She had found a way to bridge the gap to her lost twin, a path into the water, a final, desperate peace. The list changed the locks. It wasn't about keeping me out, but about forcing me to seal off our shared past, to build a new boundary, cancel the gym membership, severing the shared mundane, return the library books, a path to her hidden pain, her studies of grief. Empty the old photo album, a powerful message of starting anew, a canvas wiped clean, clean out the attic chest, a direct personal message. A letter from her heart. And finally, the lighthouse. Our beginning, her end. The place where the full, devastating truth would be revealed. Each step was a painful revelation. Each item, a piece of a puzzle I never knew existed. She had laid out a path of grief for me to follow, knowing I would need to understand, even if the understanding came at a terrible cost. The sun climbed higher, casting golden light on the water. The beach was still deserted, silent witnesses to my sorrow. I held the swallow in my hand, its carved wings spreading outwards, forever in flight. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder to keep moving, to keep living. I knew with a heartbreaking certainty that I couldn't search for her. Her note was clear. The ocean held her now, and in a way, it felt right. She had returned to the element that had taken her sister, completing a circle of sorrow, and, she hoped, peace. The weight of her unspoken suffering, her last selfless act, was immense. She had chosen to bear her pain alone, to protect me from its darkness. This was her final act of love, painful and profound. I stood up, the sand gritty beneath my shoes. My body ached, but my mind felt strangely clear. The fog of confusion had lifted, replaced by a devastating, yet oddly liberating, understanding. I pulled out her journal again, flipping to the last page. Her final words: live a full life. For both of us. That was the ultimate, unwritten item on the list. Not a command to be completed, but a way of being. A promise I had to make. The journey she had orchestrated for me wasn't just about closing a chapter. It was about opening my eyes to her pain, to the fragility of life, to the importance of truly seeing the ones you love. I walked back towards my car, the small wooden swallow clutched in my hand. The ocean stretched out behind me, vast and unknowable. The locks were changed, the shared life dismantled, but something new had been built within me. A profound sadness, yes, but also a deep, deep understanding. I looked at the swallow. It was a reminder that even in the deepest sorrow, there could be a glimmer of hope, a whisper of a future. She couldn't live it, but she wanted me to. The path ahead was still murky, filled with the void she left behind. But now, I had a direction, not a task on a list, but a purpose whispered from the depths of her final love. Live for her, for me, for the life we had, and the life I still had to lead. This was not the end of pain, but it was the beginning of acceptance. The heartbreaking journey of her list had just ended, but my own had just begun. And the very last item, the most important one, was only just beginning. The drive back felt different. The 8 hours were still long, but the silence wasn't as suffocating. It was filled with her voice from the journal, from the notes, from the quiet understanding that had settled in my heart. The pain was still there, a constant ache, but it was no longer raw, bewildered agony. It was the deep sorrow of loss, tinged with a profound, tragic love. I arrived home in the dead of night, the house dark and quiet. I unlocked the new lock, the click sounding different now. Not a sound of finality, but a sound of passage. I was stepping into a new phase, no longer resisting, but accepting. And then the unnumbered items. The quote about grief, the locket with Lily's picture, the wooden swallow with a single word carved into its base, live. I placed the swallow on the counter, right next to the list. It was a tangible reminder, a promise. The next few weeks were a blur of quiet routine. I went to work, interacted with people, but inside I was still processing. The shock had passed, but the grief remained, heavy and constant. I didn't tell anyone the full story. How could I? How could I explain a love so profound that it led to such a heartbreaking, self-sacrificing end? Her parents called, eventually. They were worried. She hadn't been in touch. I told them she had gone on a trip, needed space. It was a lie, but it was a kindness. I couldn't burden them with the horrific truth of their daughter's desperate sorrow. Maybe one day, when I was stronger, when they were stronger, I would find a way to share the parts that could bring them peace. But not yet. I started to live, truly live, not just exist. I made myself eat. I went for walks. I even found myself humming old tunes sometimes, though the tears would often come unbidden. I started to notice the little things again, the way the light hit the leaves on the trees, the laughter of children playing in the park, the scent of rain. I still talked to her in my head. Sometimes I would pick up the swallow and just hold it, imagining her there, urging me on live. One afternoon, a few months later, I was cleaning out the attic again. This time truly cleaning, not just searching for clues. I found a box of old art supplies that belonged to her. Canvases, paints, brushes. She had always loved to paint, though she rarely showed her work. I picked up a blank canvas. It was a good size, not too big, not too small. I thought about the empty photo album, the blank pages she had left for me. I realized this was another blank canvas, not just for a painting, but for my life. I decided to try. I wasn't an artist, not like her, but maybe I could learn. Maybe I could express the complexity of my feelings, the layers of sorrow and understanding. I began to paint, not a portrait of her, not a landscape. I painted a lighthouse. Not the one from the coast, not the one from the postcard, but a lighthouse of my own making. Strong, standing against a dark, stormy sea. And in the sky, among the swirling clouds, I painted a small, faint image of a swallow, its wings outstretched, flying towards the light. It was a clumsy painting, imperfect, but it was mine. It was my journey captured in color and form. It was a testament to her last instruction, the unnumbered most important one. The locks were changed. The physical barriers were in place. But the locks on my heart, the ones that had kept out the deeper truths, those had been unlocked by her devastating yet strangely beautiful farewell. She had left me a to-do list, not to break me, but to mend me. Not to abandon me, but to set me free. And as I looked at the painting, at the lighthouse, standing firm against the storm, and the swallow flying free, I knew I was truly doing the final item on her list. I was living. For her, for Lily, and for myself. It was a heartbroken kind of living, but it was living nonetheless. And in that, I found a measure of peace, the deepest kind.